On Thursday, Wayne Brady appeared as a guest on The Breakfast Club in order to promote his new Broadway play, Freestyle Love Supreme. During the interview, Brady told the story of how he got involved in the infamous sketch on Chappelle's Show. Turns out, it was because Paul Mooney made a joke at Wayne's expense, where he said Brady makes Bryant Gumbel look like Malcolm X. Now, Dave Chappelle caught wind that Wayne was upset, apologized for the joke, and invited him to do the viral sketch. Today we have our comedy hype analysts, Vanessa Fraction, Capone, and Pierre calling to the show, along with a very special guest, stand-up comedian Mark Gregory, who also happens to be the nephew of the legendary Dick Gregory, to talk about Wayne's reveal. And we have to ask, was Paul Mooney wrong for the joke he made about Wayne Brady? But first, let's take a look at this clip.
The barber is cutting my hair and oh, shut, the Dave show's on. Okay, the sketches, it's great, and then Wayne Brady makes Brian Gumbel looks like, it's like, what the I was so, it wasn't because, and I've gone down on record, God bless Paul Mooney.
Paul Mooney,
God bless him, a comedy legend. When I got to talk to Paul years later, I stand by the fact that that joke was whack. Mm-hmm. It's not a funny joke. Right. So we'd just gone to the Hoodies, and then it was like an after party. Donnell Rollins comes up and some other cats. But I'll tell you, just, hey, man, I got to tell you, it's like, oh, it's Ashy Larry. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, man, Wayne, I'm a big fan. Now, I'd had a couple to drink, so my tongue was loose.
Okay.
And I wasn't on network TV.
Okay.
So I wasn't beholden to anyone before. And shout out to Donnell. I love that cat.
I saw he just posted when you shot him on there, too,
man,
just recently.
I love that cat. Mm-hmm. He's like, Wayne, I'm such a fan that I, like, really? Well, you're such a fan. Well, y'all in that joke.
Now, I want to dive into that, but first I do want to make sure that we properly welcome our guest, Mark Gregory. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. What's going on?
Yes, thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to talk to you more about everything that you have going on. But the subject at hand, so after watching that clip, what are your reactions to that? Do you think Paul Mooney was right about, everything that he said about Wayne Brady? What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I do think, a comedian can go too far, I don't think he was right about Wayne Brady. And, speaking of Paul Mooney, I remember watching the roast of John Witherspoon, right, where Earthquake said, Paul Mooney is proof that everybody has a gay uncle, right? And Paul Mooney he was super, super mad. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's kind of the same energy, right? Where Paul Mooney said something about
Wayne Brady,
and he wasn't feeling it. So I feel like it's the same situation. Yeah, I definitely think you can go too far with a joke. And, that was it.
Pierre, I want to come to you with that same question. What's your reaction to it? And do you think Paul Mooney was right about what he said about Wayne Brady?
Right is not the right word I'll choose, but what people have thought. Let's be honest. Wayne Brady's not in the lexicon of black people. Now he is more. But before the Chappelle Show, he was not. Let's be honest. He was not. We can sit there and say, yeah, well, I like him all the time. I get it, but he was not. He was on the Brian Gumbel, more doing white shows. When people do more white things, they got bigger urban, not what you call mainstream fans or white fans. People feel like they're not down. They're not, part of it. And he alluded to the joke about that, saying that he didn't. Now, was the joke funny? To me, it was funny, but I'm a Paul Mooney fan. I do think he could not have said that. That's fine, too. I like the way Wayne Brady came, did what he did to change it around. He did something. Now, for him to say, when Chappelle called, he flew out there, and damn, they didn't know what he was doing until they got on the set to talk about it. Well, I don't believe that. Why would you do that? If someone did something about me on the show, and they said, I want you to come to my house and do a skit again, we're going to change it. I'd be like, what's the skit? Before I fly out there. If I'm so happy to fly there, I'm flying out there. Whatever you say. Well, if you're that down for it, then you should be understanding how Chappelle rolls. You're not mad at Chappelle. Chappelle had to get it edited and put on the show. He could have said no to that sketch, but he said yes. At the point they did it, I think people thought it was funny. It was one of being hurtful, and they backtracking from it, being hurtful. Again, I like Wayne. I'm a huge Wayne Brady fan. I really am, especially since he did that. And before that, I didn't really know Wayne that well, but since he did the Chappelle skit, he solidified himself and made himself streetable, and now people know he ain't that kind of dude that we thought he was.
Right. And let me ask you this, Pierre. So I know that you toured with Paul Mooney. You're on the road with him. Did you ever hear Paul Mooney talk about this incident with Wayne Brady or about Wayne Brady's joke?
No, I never heard him. But let's be honest. Paul Mooney wasn't the nicest person You know what I'm saying? He'd be very edgy. The nigga, you know, he said stuff about me, you know, in my book, in my forward, he talked about me. But I accepted him for who he was. I understood what I got from him. And that's the stuff he delivered. Okay. He talked about OJ being a sellout and all that. That's who he was.
Right.
You know, and it hurt his career. That's why he wasn't a large star until toward the end. He started getting larger. It hurt him. He decided to sit in that saddle and go with those kind of jokes, that kind of humor. You knew when you were going to Paul Mooney's show what you were getting. Let's not be surprised. So what he said up there, I thought it was funny. I don't want to be hurtful for Wayne, but I thought it was funny. It hurt Wayne. I feel bad about that though.
Right. Now, I want to bring that same question back to you, Vanessa. After watching that clip, you know, what are your thoughts about the clip, or do you think Paul Mooney was right about Wayne Brady?
Yeah, as Pierre said, I don't know about right, because like funny and jokes don't have to be accurate. It just has to make you laugh. You know what I mean? And so did I chuckle? I think I did when I first heard it, because when I grew up, there was a thing where you just believed that Bryant Gumbel was like an Oreo, as we called it, or a sellout or something like that. But I honestly never understood why they was giving Bryant Gumbel the business. The only person, I thought his brother's hair was funny, Greg Gumbel. But other than that, I didn't understand why they used to give Bryant Gumbel the business. He got all kind of NAACP awards, Peabody awards, Emmys. You know, he raised money for Black colleges. I don't know his full resume, but honestly, I never really wanted to, because of the way that they would pick on him, I guess maybe on talk shows and stuff like that. When I was growing up, I was young. And I think that was the point of why Wayne was a bit offended, is because words do have power, and you don't want to be misrepresented or make it seem as if you're not proud of who you are and your culture and where you come from. But we have this thing of what's Black enough, you know, and I appreciate Wayne saying, like, you don't own my Black card. You know what I mean? Like, how many, you know what I mean? How many things do I have to know, or what type of things do I have to do to get in your book, you know, of what, militant or something, or, you know what I mean? Or whatever, to have value as a Black person to you or whatever. So I was actually a fan of Wayne's before. I know Pierre was kind of saying, don't jump on the bandwagon, but I used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway? I watched the Wayne Brady show, and I bought his album. So,
yeah, no, and I was definitely one of those Whose Line Is It Anyway fans as well. Now I want to make sure we bring you in, Capone. Capone, what are your thoughts about that clip? And do you think Paul Mooney was right about, you know, his jokes of Wayne Brady?
I got a lot from it. Like Pierre said, I know exactly what I'm getting when I go see a Paul Mooney. And I'm a huge fan of Wayne Brady's. I think he's very, very talented. But honestly, he wasn't really that guy in the Black community that they were really checking for. And the only thing that really kind of like bothered me was he talked about Paul Mooney didn't have his Black card. It don't seem like Black people, no Black person has a person's Black card. It's the white people. Even if you go back to the movie Hollywood Shuffle, they had white people. It was a joke, but they kept telling them, you're not Black enough. You're not Black enough. And we kind of get that from watching how, you know, they stereotype us as either you're a real militant Black person, and if you're not that Black, then you're somebody like a Wayne Brady or a Brian Gamble. And that's the kind of signature that they put on guys like that. I mean, like I said, I'm a huge fan of his, but you know, I think he's very talented. I love everything that he does, but he wasn't really hitting in the Black community.
I think that's a bigger conversation though, of like that's not cool. You know what I'm saying? That's a bigger conversation of saying of that what's Black enough type of thing. I appreciate what you just said, Capone, about, you know, especially in television and movies, how, you know, this isn't Black enough or that isn't Black enough, but then we do that within our own community. You know what I mean? I guess you go ahead and pick it up. Go ahead and pick it up, Pierre. Cool.
No, right. Well, you're absolutely right. Let me just say this part. The reason we feel about certain actors aren't Black enough is, first of all, both of them married outside their race. Now, hold on. We got to go 15 years back. Don't start talking about today where everybody wants to have a light-skinned white woman or Mexican girlfriend, all these rappers and stuff. Let's go 15 years back and prior. If you married outside your race, a lot of times people say, both of them, Brian Gumbel and Wayne Brady, married outside their race, white women. Plus, you didn't see them in the Black community doing stuff for the Black, Million Man marches or whatever. If we don't see that from you, even though you might do it behind closed doors, we as people need to see it. Black folks need to see you supporting Black people in a, you know, in certain situations. And that, if you don't do that, then we feel like you're not Black enough.
Right.
You're not married to somebody black, and we don't see you doing black causes, then we may say he ain't black enough. And that's where that came from to me.
But Brian Gumble was doing black causes though, when he was raising money for black colleges and stuff like that. I understand what you. I don't know.
Okay.
I read it in an article. I was young.
Right,
That's what I'm saying. Like I wasn't like hip to the scene. I read it in an article. He also said he wished he could have attended the Million Man March, and that things like that are necessary because we can't do it alone. And he said a lot of things. You know, Brian Gumble, I'm talking about, or whatever.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, I get what like we I guess the whole conversation. Let me let you get to the next question, Chip.
I think it's a great conversation. I love how y'all expanded that. I do think that's a conversation that we, need to have in our community. But I'll bring it back to you, Mark, and I do want to ask this question. So when we're looking at things from hindsight, right? Do you think that Paul Mooney helped Wayne Brady's career based on that joke or that bit that he did on Chappelle's Show?
Nah, I mean, I think Paul Mooney was, not Paul Mooney, but I think Wayne Brady was prior to that bit, but again, in the black community, black people weren't checking for him, but he was good in the mainstream world, so.
Right. I'll bring that same question to you, Pierre. Do you think Paul Mooney helped Wayne Brady's career?
Yes. It opened him up to another side. We didn't know how tough he could talk. He even made a joke about how I'll shoot a bit. Wayne Brady got to do this to a female. It made him a tougher person. We started saying, wow, you a street cat. You talk street. Now, even look at the Breakfast Club. He has more of a flair. Yeah, dude, this, that, and the other. So it's opened him up. We never seen that side of him. Now, was that the caveat? What do you call it? The caveat that started it off? That show made us see him in a different light when he wanted to express himself more urban, more tougher. Before that, I never seen him that. He was always on mainstream TV. He's not going to talk that way on mainstream interviews. You know what I'm saying? With Barbara Walters or something like that, he won't be that tough. But after that show, we started seeing a different view. And whenever you have more people started coming to see him and like it, more black people started saying, oh, he is a street dude. He got some swagger. That helps your brand. Why doesn't it help your brand? So I think it did.
Capone, I'll come to you next. Do you think that that Paul Mooney helped Wayne Brady's career?
No, I wouldn't say it helped or hurt. I think that Wayne Brady's feelings got hurt. And when he spoke about it, especially on the Breakfast Club, that helped him, and it gave a light to the Dave Chappelle skit that he did. Paul Mooney is Paul Mooney. Some people listen to him, some people don't. Paul Mooney's been a person who talked about a lot of things that a lot of comedians want to talk about, but they didn't have the balls to talk about them. And so Wayne Brady mentioned it on the Breakfast Club, which pretty much every black person listened to, and then they wanted to see it. So I think that helped his career a lot more. I mean, he already had a successful career,
right?
But yeah, that helped him to me.
Vanessa, last and certainly not least, I'll bring that same question to you. Do you think Paul Mooney helped Wayne Brady's career?
We'll start with what the brother started with. He already had an amazing career. Did he add to it by broadening his audience? Not necessarily Paul Mooney, but that perfect storm of all that crap happening and him saying like, hey, I didn't even like that, going off being drunk at that time. It was just like a perfect storm where, yes, it did, as it broadened his audience. So not that he wasn't that person already. And the character that he played, and I'll use the word character, was on that skit. It was like, that's not him either. That's a character, but you're like, oh, I didn't even know he could get that hard though. And so it's like, then now you're looking at him as a full person, because we all have layers. We're all, you know what I mean? We all have these different sides of us. And if it's not an appropriate place to display a certain part of your personality, then then I think that's okay too.
Yeah, and I definitely have to agree as well. I think, it definitely added a different layer. I know for me, like I said, I was a Whose Line Is It Anyway fan. So Wayne Brady was always, funny to me. But being able to see him on Chappelle's Show definitely allowed me to see his range. It's not necessarily you're looking at it like, oh, that's who Wayne Brady is. But being able to see him in a different light and portray different things definitely helps. Exactly, in the entertainment space where he has that range.
When someone says a joke's not funny, but people laugh, it's not funny to you. You can't say that joke wasn't funny because he said, I didn't do that. He said that joke wasn't funny. No, it was funny, not to you though. People did laugh. There's a lot of people who laughed at that joke. So to say when people say that joke's not funny and people laugh, I don't get that. It's not funny to you.
Well, I think we'd have to start saying that a lot then. That wasn't funny to me. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Because
universally,
we all laugh.
Well, plenty of people did, but he didn't, and maybe some others didn't. His daughter probably didn't. His mama didn't. I don't know who all didn't laugh, but I think it's okay to say like it wasn't funny to me, like you said.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as always, I appreciate y'all for chiming in. This is always a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you as well, Mark, for chiming in. Now, before I let you go, I do want to dive in. We are going to dive in a little bit. So I know you have a special, Run With It. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we head out?
Yeah, so I was on tour with my Uncle Dick for the last 2 years of his life. And right before he passed away, he said, nephew, I'm passing the baton to you. He said, he kind of knew that he wasn't going to be around too much longer, right? So when he passed, about a year and a half later, I recorded a comedy special and dedicated it to him. And the title is called Run With It. And just because, our lives were eerily similar. We ran track in high school and in college. So just him passing the baton to me, that's where the title came from, just Run With It.
Awesome. What encouraged you, looking back, what encouraged you to even get into comedy?
So I went to college in the South, like Mississippi, Ole Miss.
Yes.
And I had never really read any of my uncle's books. One book that he wrote is Nigger. I didn't know about that book. I knew about Calluses on My Soul. So I went to the library, all white school, and was like, yo, you all have Calluses on My Soul by Dick Gregory. So this white girl is typing in the computer and her face turned red. And she looked up and was like, we don't have Calluses on My Soul, but we have. And she was like for real scared to say nigger. And she turned the computer screen and was like, we have this one right here. And I was like, I paused and laughed. I was like, yo, this was like funny. And that moment was the moment where I was like, you know what, let me give stand-up a try. So after reading that book is what I just found out so much about my uncle, much more than I didn't know, and that's just dove into it from there.
Now, having Dick Gregory as your uncle is definitely something that obviously not a lot of people can say, because you got to really experience him. Like you said, you spent the last 2 years with him. So looking back, like we know Dick Gregory from our point of view, right? The things that we see, whether you toured with him or what have you. But what was your most memorable moments? If you could look back, what would be a memorable moment of Dick Gregory?
Man, there's a lot of them. I think just Dick Gregory he never got tired. I mean, I remember we would be on the road. He would probably sleep for like an hour, and he would be like, hey, let's run here. Like we were in Cleveland one time. We did like Toledo, Funny Bone, Columbus, and Cleveland. Cleveland was the last stop, and I am exhausted. I had been driving us, to the different clubs, and I'm falling asleep at the lunch table. Because going out with him, it was hard. You can't just go grab something to eat. People want to stop and take pictures. He was like, nephew, I need you to take me to Walmart. And I was like, hey, man, you want me to be funny tonight? Right. And I was like, listen, I can't. I got to go and get some rest. So I went back to the hotel. And it was just like those moments like that, where he just was a people person. He never had security. I remember one time in particular, we did a Hartford Funny Bone, and he went to Walgreens. He purchased USA Today, Wall Street Journal, like 5 different newspapers, and then came out with a whole new 20 minutes about what he just read. Wow. So just like the hunger that he had. I mean, still doing comedy. He was like 82 at the time, and was still writing, was still topical. That in and of itself, like that discipline was an inspiration.
I want to piggyback on that. Now, I've been around your uncle a couple of times, and I appreciate him. I love him. I really did for what he's done and what he stood for. Now, this is in a loving way. I was around him at times, and we sat in little rooms and talked, and he seemed to be at times cantankerous, a little, you try to say something, whatever it was. And comics know that, he was very passionate. We'll use the word passionate about what he believed in. And sometimes it was kind of pushed back, like, all right, you want to say that. Is there a side of him that we didn't know that, that you saw privately? Is there a person, a part that we didn't, is there something we don't, what's the word I'm looking for? Not understood. Is there just something that, he was underestimated by? I don't know what the right word is. You know what I'm saying? Because when I was around him, he had energy, and he was like, he was so strong about it. Sometimes it came off a little cantankerous, like, all right, dude, all right, man. Is there something like you said, no, he wasn't like this, and he did this more? You wouldn't be surprised if he's like this. That's all I'm kind of asking.
Pierre, I know exactly what you mean. So his son put it this way, right? He said, like his last few years, that Dick Gregory was potentially like ruining Richard Gregory, right? And what was happening was my uncle was in a lot of pain those last few years, right? And he did a high school. He performed at a high school. And my cousin, who was like over his business affairs, he said he had been great at separating Richard Gregory, which was like the lecturer, and Dick Gregory, the comedian. But this particular day, he said they just kind of merged. He was kind of just going off on kids. And those last few years, he was in, just a lot of pain. But he was still going out and doing dates. So yeah, I mean, I think every comic who ran into Dick Gregory, even myself, we had those stories where I was just trying not to get cussed out, or you had it, right? Or even like when you had conversations with Dick Gregory, you're not talking to Dick Gregory. He talking to you about what you want to talk about for hours, and that was it. So I think that what you experienced, like those last few years, that's really what it was. It was a dude, 80 years old, been traveling the world the last 50 years doing comedy, and he was in pain, So that's what we got. But it was moments where he was cool, and then some moments, you just like, all right, I'm probably gonna get cussed out today.
Right, okay.
Now, the last thing I did want to bring up, and it kind of goes into that same field. So I know when your dad passed away, that Dick Gregory was able to get up and leave some remarks. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. So again, it's just my uncle being Dick Gregory. My dad passed in 2005. My Uncle Dick, he got up and we thought he was gonna say some remarks about his brother, and he went on the Dick Gregory rant. My brother was a victim of this white racist tyrannical society. His body gave out on him. Huh? His blood cells gave out on him. Y'all wanna know what blood cells? Them white blood cells was the ones that gave out on him. So he goes on this rant, right? It wasn't nothing about blood cells. And then, so all of my dad's siblings are on the front row, and he was like, listen, y'all need to figure out who's gonna be next, because it ain't me. Hello, and walked off.
Wow.
And my sister and I, we was looking like, so you're not gonna say nothing about Pops, but that was Dick Gregory.
No, and I think that definitely says a lot. He is who he is. Like you say, he had his time, he had his moments. So I appreciate you sharing that story and giving us some insight to different things that you've experienced. Because like I said, a lot of people get to see it from our perspective, but being able to somebody that was right there beside him is definitely. So thank you again for joining us today. Everybody, let's give a round. We appreciate you for chiming in. And where can we find Run With It?
You can find it on Amazon and Apple TV. So yeah, comedian Mark Gregory, Run With It on Apple TV and Amazon, my new comedy special.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on everything. And again, thank you all for chiming in. You heard from us. Now we want to hear from you in the comments below. Was Paul Mooney wrong for the joke about Wayne Brady? For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.
Put it in the comments.
In the comments.